Has Minecraft gotten easier? It's an interesting question, one with many aspects and dimensions to it. Was Minecraft harder before? Did the natural progression of the game, its players and updates, make the game gradually easier over time? How do we even answer this question? You see, I've recently been streaming a modified version of Minecraft Hardcore on Twitch, and it has really reminded me that the game can be difficult at times. You see, these days, Minecraft's survival element does not feel as challenging as it once did, and surviving is no longer the main goal of the game. Back in beta and alpha versions of the game, having full sets of diamond armor and bountiful amounts of resources was almost an unheard of thing, but these days it's far from uncommon. So what happened? I asked you guys on Twitter what you thought, and I can tell you now that there were a range of different opinions, all of which were mostly valid, which only made me more curious as to if the game really had gotten easier. Follow me on Twitter if you want to be featured in a video in the future. So that's what we are going to try to answer in this video today. Has Minecraft really gotten easier over time? Alright, so to begin we need to talk about the objective changes or updates to the game, which did indeed make it easier. And to do that, we need to talk about how the game has changed. So let's go all the way back to Minecraft Alpha and Beta now, the game's early days from 2010 to late 2011. First of all, back in these old versions of the game, sprinting did not exist. Now don't think I have to explain just how strong the ability to sprint is, but it basically gives players the ability to just run away from their problems or issues. When sprinting, there is no other mob besides bosses such as the Ender Dragon, if they don't count, that can catch you. So back in Alpha and Beta versions of the game, when you were faced with some mobs or backed into a corner in a cave, majority of the time you had to fight your way out. Your ability to just run away from mobs was much more limited. Sprinting gave players the ability to choose between running from danger and facing it, and most of the time the best thing to do is just run. Stuck in a cave and a bunch of mobs are nearby? Sprint past them. Forgot to sleep and now it's dark outside? Quickly leg it to your base. Ultimately, sprinting gave players choice, that being whether or not to face danger head on or run away from it. Now another aspect of Alpha and Beta which made the game harder was the lack of a brightness slider in video settings, meaning that the game's brightness was basically capped at the equivalent of moody in modern versions of the game. Now, this actually made nights substantially more difficult as it actually felt like a scary event. You couldn't see that far at night, meaning the chance of mobs creeping up on you or just coming from areas hidden to your vision was much higher. And caves were also much scarier for a similar reason. It was just harder to see enemies, giving you less time to react. A lack of enchantments for tools and armor also meant that you weren't as well protected. All armor gave a base degree of damage reduction, which was 80% in Alpha and Beta, so the only difference between rare armor such as diamond and easier to obtain armor such as leather was simply durability. All armor protected you the same. The only benefit of diamond armor was that it had higher durability, lasting longer. However, Release 1.0.0 added enchantments for tools, and in the case of armor, full diamond armor with protection 4 on it adds 6.4% damage reduction on average, meaning that full diamond armor with protection 4 can reduce on average 92% of damage. And not only protection, but other enchantments such as feather falling meant you could survive much longer drops. Respiration meant you could last longer underwater. Then there was fire protection, blast protection, and more. Weapon enchants such as sharpness and smite meant that mobs could be killed much faster. Enchantments such as efficiency and unbreaking on tools meant that you could gather resources and mine faster. In Alpha and Beta, diamonds were very rare, and having a full set of armor of them was definitely a testament to your commitment to the game. But getting a full set of diamond armor, or just a lot of diamonds in general, is far easier when you have efficiency and fortune, allowing you to not only mine faster, but to also get more value from the ores you mine. Basically, enchantments made the game safer for players, as it was no longer as punishing when you misplayed or got yourself into trouble. They also made the game easier by making it less grindy. Tool enchantments allow you to accomplish tasks such as collecting resources and mining out areas much faster than Beta and Alpha. Not only enchantments, but the addition of potions to the game also gave players extra tools to prepare for certain situations. Going to the nether? Bring some fire resistance with you. Fighting some mobs? Just chug some strength and have some healing potions on you just in case. Potions just gave players more security and more options in these previously dangerous scenarios, making them far less risky. Now, finally, I would say that the last objective difference in difficulty between modern versions of the game and Alpha and Beta versions of the game was the lack of beds until Minecraft Beta 1.3. This meant that in some old versions of the game, there was no way to skip the nights, once again forcing you to face dangers. This also meant that you couldn't set your spawn point, so if you built your base quite far out and then died, good luck getting back without sprinting, without any items, and without being able to skip the nights. Having the ability to skip the nights in newer versions of the game is arguably one of the strongest abilities you as a player have, as you can basically decide, nope, I don't want to put myself in danger, so I'll sleep. Now, before we continue, I just want to say, only a small percentage of you guys are actually subbed, so please subscribe if you haven't already, as it greatly helps me out. Anyways, you know what's most interesting? Go back and watch some of the early Minecraft Let's Plays from 2010 to 2011, and you may notice something. They all have a strong focus on survival, and for the first half a dozen episodes or so, it seems the Let's Players are just trying to survive. Let's use X's adventures in Minecraft as an example here. The first 2 episodes of the Let's Play are focused almost solely on survival, with him finding a nice mountain and digging out a small shelter. The second episode purely involves X gathering some basic resources such as coal and wood, before almost dying to a single skeleton in an incredibly dark cave. He is then forced to wait out the night in a cave, as he is not yet strong enough to face the mobs head on, but he's also unable to skip it, making it feel as if he's in a real predicament, and if he's not careful, he could lose his life. He then expands his small little shelter and builds an outside fort for protection in the next 2 episodes, and doesn't begin properly mining down at lower wire levels until the 6th or 7th episode. Throughout his whole Let's Play, he only manages to accumulate a few diamonds which he uses for tools. He never had a full set of diamond armor. You see how long it took for him to survive? No, of course, the fact that he was new to the game probably made it more difficult for him, but at the time he was seen as one of the most knowledgeable players. Okay, so let's now look at any modern Let's Play, and I wouldn't be surprised if the whole gather resources, build a small shelter, and survive the first few nights would be done in roughly 30 minutes, if not less. I also wouldn't be surprised if by the 3rd or 4th episode, if not earlier, the Let's Player already had a full set of diamond armor, a feat which was almost unheard of in alpha and beta. And the thing is, these modern Let's Plays don't focus on surviving anymore, but rather focus on progressing through the game as fast as possible. And that's simply because not only has progressing through the early game become easier with the ability to skip the nights, but mobs just don't threaten players enough to the point where it forces them to play cautiously in the early days of a new survival world. Surviving the first few Minecraft nights is no longer difficult, but rather it is seen as a slight inconvenience. Alright, so we've talked a lot about the more objective or fact-based changes or implementations of the game which have made it easier over the past few years. But how about we talk about some of the features which have made modern Minecraft more difficult? First of all, to balance sprinting, the food bar was added in beta 1.8. Previously, in prior beta and alpha versions, you would heal health by just right-clicking a pork chop or steak, instantly restoring a certain amount of hearts. Now you have to eat whenever the food bar goes down, not only to restore health, which regenerates much slower mind you, but also to, well, stay alive. Let your food bar go down to 3 and you can no longer sprint. Let it go down all the way and you will starve to death. The food bar did make the game more challenging. Bows were also balanced properly in beta 1.8. Back in beta 1.7.3 and prior versions, the bow was a literal machine gun, having the ability to fire almost instantly. You didn't need to draw it back and also didn't have any durability, meaning that they would never break. Fill your inventory with arrows and you're basically unkillable. No mobs can even get close to you. In beta 1.8, they changed the bow, giving it a proper drawback animation, making it so if you release your shot too early, it wouldn't go very far and would do very little damage. Bows were also given durability, so they would break or run out eventually. Ladders also used to be able to be placed with a gap between them, meaning you could save some resources, making the game ever so slightly easier in older versions. One other small thing is that diamond swords and other swords did more damage in older versions of the game. Diamond swords used to do 5 hearts of damage, which was reduced to 3.5 in 1.0.0 to make way for enchantments. This is kind of negligible though, because enchantments made it so swords could do way more than 5 hearts of damage in later versions. And you know what? That's really about it. I, along with my community, couldn't think of anything else that was stronger in beta and alpha than newer versions of the game. Super fast machine gun bows and insta-healing with food are the only 2 objective features we could come up with that would have made substantial differences. Okay, so now I want to talk about even more recent changes and one major feature which has contributed to the game becoming substantially easier over time. The addition of in-game structures such as villages, desert temples, ruined nether portals, shipwrecks, buried treasures and more. It's not uncommon for these structures to have loot as rare as god apples and diamonds in them, providing only minimal challenge to get so, meaning that players who literally just spawned in will have very little trouble gaining access to late game items. Let's use the desert temple as our example here. The main idea behind them is that they contain rare loot, but if you don't know what you're doing, you're likely to die or not find the loot. Let's say you just found a desert temple for the first time ever and have never seen one before. You are unlikely to know that you have to break the stained clay to find the rare loot room, and you are also likely to accidentally step on the pressure plate if you do manage to find the loot room, getting yourself blown up. The thing with desert temples and other structures which generate in-game is that once you've experienced them once, they are no longer ever going to surprise you or get you killed again, because you know the traps and you know where the loot is. So desert temples and other structures are basically just free loot without the challenge. This gives players access to what should be considered late game items super easily. And as I mentioned, it's not only desert temples that have this problem. Shipwrecks and buried treasure are easy to navigate and locate, jungle temples are easy as well. Villages by themselves aren't too strong. They do give quite a lot of food, but that's about it. It's the potential of villager trading which really has made the game easier. Blacksmiths these days can literally trade you enchanted diamond armor for 30ish emeralds. You can get the best enchanted book trades by just spending 10 to 15 minutes resetting a villager's trades over and over. And emeralds aren't even hard to get. There are so many different ways of mass producing emeralds through trading that they aren't even considered rare anymore. The whole problem with structures, I believe, is that they don't really provide any challenge, but provide loot which should be challenging to get. But nevertheless, I think their loot tables should just be slightly balanced, that's all. They definitely are cool additions to the game, and should remain. Alright, so you see that with all this discussion we've had today, one thing which I've ignored is the fact that the goal or objective of Minecraft has sort of changed. Initially in alpha and beta versions, it was primarily to survive and prosper. Then, with the release of 1.0.0, and through the game's rise to popularity during 2012 to 2014, it was to beat the Ender Dragon. But more recently in the last few years, let's say from roughly 2016 on, it has been to, well, accomplish your own goals. Take Hermitcraft for example. Beating the Ender Dragon for them isn't the end of the game, but rather it's where the game finally begins. And the same could be said for anybody who plays survival Minecraft for more than just what the game guides you through and offers. Because Minecraft is just so creative, the real objective of the game is to accomplish your own goals, whether that be to build massive bases, dozens of advanced automatic farms, or to, I don't know, collect the most diamonds. These are all player objectives, and the reason players can even accomplish these kinds of things is because the game updated and became easier at face value. But think about it, nobody ever built iron farms, massive mob farms, crazy fast gold XP farms, and more in beta and alpha versions of the game. These are very challenging and hard to build structures that were never built simply because it wasn't possible to build them back then. The fact that Minecraft has seemed to have gotten easier with every update is kind of true, if you only look at the changes at face value. But ultimately, game updates have also added so many new dimensions and possibilities for players that they can challenge themselves to a far higher degree than was ever possible in alpha and beta. The challenge of Minecraft is no longer in surviving, but in building, designing, and creating whatever your heart desires. And that is why I believe that yes, Minecraft has technically gotten easier, but with that it has expanded and become a much more advanced and detailed game than it ever has been. What was once considered a highly skilled or advanced build in beta is no longer considered as such. The standards of the game have gotten so much higher that the skill it takes to truly make and do impressive things has increased. So, to conclude, for that exact same reason, I believe that Minecraft has gotten harder over the years, and it will only continue to evolve and become harder over time. But hey, that's just my opinion really. So if you disagree or have something you want to say, then be sure to leave a comment and subscribe while you're down there. Follow me on Twitter if you want to be featured in videos in the future, link is in the description. Thank you all so much for watching.